back to Below the 38 Football and Adventures in South Korea. Mike Brandon is back with us after a week off. He visited the homeland, took in some football while he was there. I'm Andrew. I'm here as ever, going over this the K-League 2 preview, week 12 of the season. Welcome back, Mike.
How you doing?
Before we talk about this weekend in K-League 2, and we're going to talk about the WK League today. We're going to talk about the Women's Asian Champions League semi-finals taking place in Suwon next week, midweek, and then also some bit of news on K3. Who did you go see when you went home?
We took in the delights of Craven Cottage for what would be an unbelievable top European promotion clash, I guess, or European qualification clash 5 or 6 years ago, but Fulham versus Bournemouth. But a delightful stadium, very whimsical, I must say. It's not like anything I've ever been to before in football, which in some ways is to Fulham's credit. It is highly recommended for a lovely, wonderful day out with some football on somewhere in the background.
I've only been once as well. I saw Fulham against, I think it was Crystal Palace, I can't even remember, but it was a pre-season friendly, 1 August. It wasn't even a competitive match. But yeah, it's very nice. Having a pint with the Thames River in the background, that stand opposite the main stand is absolutely wonderful. Yeah, it's a good spot. If you had to compare, I know that the answer is none, but what is the closest stadium you've been to Korea that would give you a vibe, let's say, that's similar to Craven Cottage in terms of like an atmosphere or even the stadium itself, or just the buzz or the feel of being there? You can be as honest as possible.
I'm trying to think of any experience which is comfortable. Even the seats are padded at Craven Cottage. It's quite unreal. What I must say is I was almost down in Wrexham on the Monday evening, who failed on the last day to qualify for the playoffs. I was hoping to at least be by the stadium for the attempts at pushing for the playoff final. I think Wrexham would have given me a better experience of the old National League days of travelling around, I must say. But I don't think there's anything quite like Craven Cottage, perhaps in world football, really. At least I've not experienced anything like it.
Jungen?
Let's get on with today's business.
So, from the last time Mike was on to today, the website that we have, belowthe38korea.com, is basically fully functional now. Check out our website. There'll be a link to that in the description to this podcast. We've kind of gone heavy on stadium guides at the moment. I'm about to finish off one for the Suwon Stadium in preparation for next week's Asian Champions League semi-final. There's a couple of weekend previews up, a couple of interviews, mix zones, and all that kind of stuff. So please check out our website, belowthe38korea.com. And of course our YouTube page and our Instagram page. We're coming to the point of the season now where there's not going to be a lot of football for a while in Korea. Luke and I just hosted the K-League 1 preview for this upcoming weekend, and that is the last weekend of fixtures until the weekend of July the 4th in K-League 1. Fortunately, there are 4 more weeks of football in K-League 2 for Mike and I to waffle on about, but from June the 7th, I think it is, until July the 4th, there will also be no K-League 2 on. We will still be here in one form or another, hosting a podcast throughout the World Cup. We haven't really decided on what sort of a talking point or topics we're going to do yet, but we will be here. But just a reminder that for pretty much all of June, there's going to be no K-League 1, K-League 2 football in Korea, but there will be K3 and there will be WK League, and there'll be other things that we can talk about on this show. So belowthe38korea.com is our website, and Below the 38, you can find us on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. So, upcoming weekend, match day 12, Mike, the team that is sitting out this round are the Suwon Blue Wings. They have played 11 matches with 23 points from those 11 matches. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that they're sitting it out. In one sense, it's a good thing because their form has not been great. They haven't won either of the last 2 matches, and they're booed off the last time they played. The problem is, by the time they take to the field again next week, which is actually going to be Busan's week off, they could be 8 points adrift, which will make that championship race begins to a bit look like a one-horse race. So the Suwon Blings are not in action this weekend, but there are a bunch of other fixtures. The 16 other teams are playing, and they are divided evenly between 4 on Saturday and 4 on Sunday. We've got to that point of the season now. It's very, very hot during the day. There are no 2 p.m. kickoffs anymore. All the games are either at 4:30 p.m. or 7 p.m. So 4 games on Saturday. Do you want to tell us what those are?
Right. Well, Saturday is a bit of a day off if you're interested in watching K2. Jeonnam take on Cheongju, who still haven't won, but Cheongju are ahead of Jeonnam, which is quite incredible. Neither team have. Jeonnam have only won once. It's difficult to pick a winner. Probably won't be. Elan hosts Yongin. Yongin got a win against the Mighty Greeners last week. I won't say the Yongin played well because Ansan played pretty poorly. Elan should be sweeping them aside after their recent setbacks, and they should be breathing right down the Blue Wings' necks. Elan on 19 points, Blue Wings on 23. I think that should be down to just a point by the time the Blue Wings next kick a ball. Ansan hosts Gimpo. Gimpo in that perennial run of away fixtures, of course. Gimpo need to win this to break back into the playoffs. You'd think they should go to the Hwa Stadium and collect 3 points, but Ansan do have the better shade of green, so that might help them at least maybe hold Gimpo to a point. And then Cheonan City versus Paju Frontier. It's 10th versus 11th.
Cheonan are having a good season. I guess Pohang are having a good season too, but that game is at 7 p.m. on a Saturday night. It's probably the worst time to play that game. Sorry, with the exception of perhaps 7 o'clock on a Sunday. There are not going to be a lot of people at that game. That could be a very, very low attendance at that game. The Jeonnam Dragons game as well. Of course, Jeonnam actually won their first match of the season, so they're 9 without a win since then. And their last 5 is basically lose, draw, lose, draw, lose. Yeah, you're right. It's not a great run of fixtures. It's meaningful to Seoul Eland because they got slaughtered. They were slaughtered in Asan last weekend. They need to pick up points again. And Gimpo, as you said before, Gimpo being in this position before with their Salta Stadium where they've had to go on extended spells playing away from home due to pitch repairs and stadium repairs. And unless they're able to keep themselves in the playoff picture, their season could basically be done by the time they return home. It's very odd. This is the second time in 3 seasons Gimpo have had a season like this. So they're the 4 fixtures on Saturday. And as Mike said, there isn't a massive amount to look forward to there. Jeonnam Dragons versus Cheongju is just... at least it's at 4:30. The stadium is nice. There's 1 win between those 2 sides all season, and that was on the opening round of the season. Cheongju have now drawn 9 of their 11 matches. Have you ever seen a record like that before?
How about Gimcheon in K1? How are they doing for draws?
They've drawn 8. So have Anyang.
We did see another,
but at least they've won a match.
Because we did see that yesterday evening, did we not?
We saw them get their 8th draw of the season, which is incredible stuff. Anyway, Sunday, better for Sunday.
This is much better. Daegu, if you look at Daegu's form, drawn 1, lost, drawn, they were falling out of the playoff equation. They really need this trip to Gimhae. I don't know what to say about Gimhae really. They got a few draws about a month back, but they've conceded 23, scored 7. They just look K3 bound, and Daegu really need this one, so I'd expect that to be a bit of a formality. Could be a good crowd, because Gimhae have had decent crowds relative to their position, and of course Daegu are the second biggest travellers in the K-League 2. In fact, even in the top 10 for the entire, thinking about K1 fans as well. But other than that, then we're moving on. Hwaseong Busan. I want to talk about that in a moment because that's my pick of the round. But Songnam play Gyeongnam also at 4:30. Again, this could have been an interesting lower table clash 15, 20 years ago in the top flight. It's now the same thing, but it's in the second division. But if Songnam do come away with a win against Gyeongnam, they will potentially break back into the playoffs. But I can't pick a winner out of those 2, frankly. But let's go on to Hwaseong Busan, because I think this is an interesting one. And you're the Blue Wings fan. You know you need Chowdhury's men to step up here. But that would put them only 4 points behind Blue Wings, of course. But is this a banana skin for Busan?
It's probably potentially, and the last time Hwaseong were in action was against Suwon FC, and they were leading for most of that game, and they were sucker punched right at the end. Hwaseong's form is some of the best you'll see in Korean football at the moment. They've won 3 out of their last 5, and those other 2 matches were a draw. So one of those drawn games was against Suwon FC, and they were so unlucky not to come away with a win. Busan, though, I got to say too, because they've won 4 out of the last 5, and the game that they lost was against the Blue Wings when they conceded a 99th minute penalty, and then they scored a minute later, but it was ruled out for offside. So these are probably the 2 most, certainly the most informed sides in K-League 2 at the moment, are Hwaseong and Busan. It has draw written all over it, which is not a bad result, I think, for either side. I think they'll both take a draw. Hwaseong will be happy to draw with the team that's top of the table. If Busan draw this game, they'll be 6 clear of the Blue Wings, having played a game more. They're still going to be in a really, really good position. But perhaps a potential banana skin, but I can see these 2 sides fighting it out for a goal, a 1-1 or a 2-2 draw.
It's a bit of jeopardy, I think, as might start entering Busan's season, because they could drop points and start thinking it's okay because we're well clear of 3rd. And I think Busan just need to keep this momentum going, because it's a long season. We're not even halfway through. And if they take their foot off now, I think they need to keep getting these high profile wins. As I said, once you start to lose a bit of form, we saw what's happened to Daegu and some other teams who just started to drop down the table quickly. So I think Busan are going to go with full intention to win, and I think it's another interesting challenge for Chowdhury to see if he can navigate a potential 5th win for Hwaseong, who are in, of course, 5th in the table right now.
I don't want to rag all over K-League 2, but as a set of fixtures, I don't think it gets any worse than that, to be honest with you. Like, it's not just that the games are not particularly exciting, but there isn't a great storyline in these fixtures. Like, the Songnam versus Gyeongnam was a fixture of 2 K-League 1 sides not that long ago, but you have 3 games taking place this weekend, fixtures that have never happened before, in league play anyway. Like, obviously Gimhae have never played Daegu before, Seoul Leland have never played Yongin, and Cheonan have never played Paju in K-League 2. They would have met each other as a semi-professional sides in K3 not too long ago, but it's not a great weekend. And we're obviously here doing a podcast on it. You want to sell it, so hopefully when we do the weekend there's just an incredible amount of drama that makes up for what on paper anyway looks like an uninspiring weekend. And I think this is the conversation against expansion, is this set of fixtures. Right. Some of these games just simply don't need to take place, in my opinion, this weekend.
Just 6 months ago, Gimhae Daegu, that would be in K3 versus K1, of course. But perhaps, I think maybe the most intriguing fixture we haven't talked about yet, and it's the Owls of Asan hosting the other Suwon, or rather the Suwon. It depends on your perspective, of course. Suwon FC in 4th, Asan in 7th. 3 points separate the 2 teams. Suwon FC started the season so well, didn't they? Their form, they've only won 1 in the last 5. They'll be looking to win this one and again start breathing down the Blue Wings' necks. This is, of course, Suwon FC do have a game in hand over the top 2. On the other hand, Asan might be walking into this thinking their season is just getting going. They can do it. They've got that belief. They've almost been promoted before in recent years, and they'll want another stab at that, I'm sure. So I think this one is quite an intriguing one, especially given it's at Asan. I think it should be at Isun Shin. It should be quite an exciting fixture, with one major exception. It's 7 p.m. on a Sunday.
So Cheonan and Asan, like a lot of the clubs, have 4 games left between now and the World Cup. Cheonan and Asan's fixtures between now and that very handy break that's coming up, they play Suwon FC, the Suwon Blue Wings, and Busan IPark. The 2 Suwon fixtures are at home, Busan is away, and then the other fixture in this run of form is against Yongin, and that is also going to be away. It could be a run of fixtures that sees them pick up nothing from a possible 12, but you never know. Imagine they came out of this with 10 points out of a possible 12, and then they absolutely are smack bang in promotion contention again. So
we'll know, because if they are going to get promoted, it's going to be for the playoffs. So they're going to have to be able to beat one of those teams to get promoted anyway in the playoffs. So I think this is a real big weekend for Asan.
And what that all means for the table, as I said before, it's looking good for now anyway. It's looking very, very good for Busan IPark. They have a nice lead over the Blue Wings. The only thing that's really of relevance then after that is second to sort of sixth, the playoff spots. There's a lot of teams that are operating just outside that level, as there tends to be. And then the bottom of the table, where unfortunately the hopes that we might have had for a battle for 17th spot, because there is that potential playoff against a K3 side later on this year. At the moment, it very much looks like it's going to be Gimhae. They only have 2 points from the first 10 matches. One of two teams in the division yet to win a game. That's K2 for this weekend. Mike and I will be back for the weekend that was on Monday. You wanted to talk about the WK League?
Let's just stop by the K3 on our way. Just while we're talking about Gimhae, because again, the K3 is there's two teams at the top in incredible form. They just aren't losing at all. Hwaseong haven't lost at all season, and again, it's hard to see anything other than wins for those. Hwaseong host Gangneung. They were expecting to win that one, while Busan Gyeotong go away to Yeoju. Slightly tricky, but they should win that one. Pocheon in third, also at home. But it looks like, again, Busan and Pocheon are going to have to keep winning. Otherwise, it's going to be potentially a Hwaseong Gimhae shoot-off later in the year for who gets a K2 berth, or whether or not Hwaseong fail to go up and we just get a couple of brand new teams from out of nowhere entering the K2 instead. Hashtag meritocracy.
When you look at the K3 table as well, like those first four teams that you mentioned, that's Hwaseong down to Daejeon Korail, their form is basically just win, 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 draw, win, 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 loss, win. Whereas pretty much from the fifth spot down, there's almost nobody winning matches in K League, in K3. It's not wonderful, you should say. So yeah, the top two especially are in extremely good form at the moment.
There is a fixture around for K3 fans. So Chuncheon hosts Jeonbuk 2, and if Chuncheon can win that, they'll put Jeonbuk 2 back to the bottom, ready for relegation to the K4.
Is there going to be a K-pop concert at the end of that game, like there is after the Jeonbuk Hyundai match?
Possible some pre-debut concert, just to give people an appetite for. Although it is actually at Chuncheon, so maybe not.
Yeah, that's right, because Gangwon FC are not playing in that stadium anymore. The mayor, I think, of Chuncheon decided he wanted to have a K3 team only in the city. I guess there's like a funding issue there, but they're bottom of K3 at the moment, so we'll see how that decision works out at the end of the season. Let's go on to the WK League then. There's a big week coming up, next week anyway, of football in Korea and Suwon specifically when it comes to women's football, but there are league fixtures between now and then.
Indeed. In fact, this one's interesting. It's an 8-team league, but the entire top four are playing from 5th through 8th. So it'd be interesting to see if any of those slip up in the race for the title. But Suwon FC might be hoping to go into the Champions League tie top of the league, and that's because Moongyong have the trickiest tie, I think, of the week, as they host Sejong in 5th. Sejong on 9 points, whereas the Moongyong are on 16 points. Suwon FC 15, Incheon 13, Hwacheon 13. But all of them will be looking to pick up wins. So I think the tie to look out for there is, can Sejong pull off a win? Because they've started to pick up form recently, albeit. And they also got that win against Incheon a few weeks back. So that'll be my pick if you're going to check out any WK League in this coming weekend. I think most of these fixtures are on Friday as well, so they don't clash, so to speak, unless you're watching from abroad.
Next week, Wednesday, there's a double header on at the Suwon Stadium. We have Melbourne City versus Tokyo, and then we have Suwon FC Women versus Naegohyang from North Korea. It's garnering a lot of attention in Korea at the moment, this particular fixture. That second one, headline in Yonhap News, I'm going to read this straight out for you. South Korea approves North Korea football team's visit for AFC semis. And then it goes on to say that under the Inter-Korean Exchange and Cooperation Act, North Korean citizens, nationals, must receive individual government approval to enter South Korea. The ministry said that the approval for this North Korean side, Naegohyang, was issued for 39 North Korean players and staff members, covering their stay from Sunday. They arrive here on Sunday in Incheon Airport via Beijing until May 24th. The winners of this game will go on to play the final, which I think is next Saturday of next week. So they will either leave early if they're eliminated at the hands of Suwon, but they did beat Suwon 3-0 already this season, or they're going to be staying on for a week in sunny Suwon. Now, the article goes on to say, this is where a lot of the news is coming from with this particular game. Some 200 South Korean civic groups have formed a 3,000-strong cheering section for this historic inter-Korean match. This is the first time ever there's been a female club team from North Korea has come to play in South Korea. North Korean national teams, men and women's, have been in Korea in the not too distant past, but we've never seen a club team from North Korea come over here. Now, the tickets went on sale yesterday, I believe, which is Wednesday over here, and they were snapped up almost immediately. But then as today went along, it's about 6,500 tickets, I think, went on sale. As today is going along, more and more tickets are beginning to find their way back up onto the ticket app. And one of the potential reasons for that is some of these civic groups, as part of the 3,000 strong cheering squad, they won't be allowed to hold up banners, it seems like, because if they do, then Suwon FC will be punished for this. You're going, I'm going. We could talk about this in a little bit more detail if we have time next week, but the kind of general build-up a week out, I haven't seen anything like this in Korean football for a long time.
Indeed, and it's almost like there's a concern that if Naegohyang, or my hometown, as the name of the North Korean side is, it sounds like it's got a somewhat political name in itself, given the context of the game, etc. But it's almost like there's a fear that they would win, because it's going to be another headache come the Saturday fixture, of course, as they have to go through all of this again. But I have a few concerns about what we're hearing in the news articles about the behaviour and what some of these civic groups actually do have planned. It could be that all fans end up banned from the stadium. That would be a concern as well, especially since securing a ticket wasn't that simple for this. Who would have thought that the hardest ticket to get this season would be a sellout for Suwon WFC? I don't know if you've read the recent article by FC Seoul Supervan I forget the newspaper who wrote that in, but there's actually many problems of securing tickets in Korea, of course. But yeah, the Suwon women's team of this season is better than the one that got pummeled by them recently as well. So it's very difficult to predict who's going to win. If you've been observing women's football internationally, the North Korean teams have been continuously defeating the South Korean women's teams of late by big margins as well. But there's some big experience that none of those North Korean players have in this women's team in Suwon right now, and you would expect that to play a part on Wednesday night.
If this game does go ahead, at the moment it's slated to go ahead. Who knows what will happen between now and Wednesday? And if Mike and I are able to enter the stadium, it might almost be worth a podcast on its own. I tried to apply for a media ticket for this game. I was told that was going to be impossible because the demand for a media ticket was so high. And at that point, the game was sold out. I still managed to get a ticket. Now I said some tickets have since been released. These civic groups apparently released a statement today saying that they will not, they will refrain from chanting national affiliations. Instead, they will just chant about each team or the club instead. There were also reports yesterday on Wednesday that Naegohyang have asked that their itinerary be kept secret. They've asked the AFC to enforce this, and their participation in pre- and post-match press conferences is of yet undetermined. It's all very, very interesting. We go to so many K-League matches over here and Asian Champions League matches and even Korean international matches, and there isn't always a story to them. Not much of a backstory, but this is definitely very curious, very interesting. It's on Footballogy. It's going to be a Footballogy check-in, which is the most important thing. So if this is as interesting as it could well be, we might have to do an emergency podcast from Castle Park on Wednesday night.
Yeah, security is going to be very interesting as well. Obviously, I'll be driving there, so are they going to block cars leaving? I'm not, while they deal with escorting the North Korean team bus. I don't think I've ever really seen anything like this, at least at club level here. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting. What I do hope is that I've been to Castle Park this season, and I've seen Suwon FC play away. They do have a decent set of fans. I'll be very disappointed if they've been kept out of being in a block or being able to sit together to actually support the home side because of all those tickets being snapped up by the civic groups as you've mentioned. So that's another bit of a tale I'd like to see, and it will raise questions about ticket distribution again for a game that, as you said, clearly I've never seen a game sell out quite like this. Although I think on the K1 preview may have mentioned another one, but for very different reasons this weekend.
Yeah, I also like that. It's not like every ticket's for sale. I mean, they've only opened it. I think it's at East Stand, like the lower half of it. I don't know why there aren't more tickets available. If the game is sold out, I can't understand why you can't just open up more blocks of seats. There may be a good reason for that, but I can't figure out a good reason. I haven't heard a good reason for that. So yeah, it's going to be a unique experience if it goes ahead, and I think by the time we host the weekend that was on Monday, we'll be definitely getting more excited for that match. So that's Suwon FC Women versus Naegohyang on Wednesday at the Suwon Football Stadium. Also, like just to point out too that I was at the Suwon Stadium just a couple of weeks ago, and they have particularly strict security there as it is, and they're not afraid to throw people out of that stadium, as I saw firsthand at the Suwon Derby. So if there's any stadium and a security group associated with a stadium that's familiar and comfortable with just ejecting fans from a stadium, it's that particular stadium. So we'll see how that works out. Anyway, that's it from us, I think, for tonight. Any other news?
I think just before we go, I think I'll take a look and...
Oh, sorry, of course, from Inside the Box, yes.
We have to get something in there, don't we, from Korean football history. So
yeah,
this time...
How could I forget?
Obviously, getting the opportunity to see any North Korean team play. We do get North Korean players, of course. There's a lot of Anyang, also quite recently. But to actually see a North Korean team is quite rare. I think, as you've mentioned, you've seen them at the Asian Championships here, etc. But I did have the privilege of seeing this ticket, although it does not actually state North Korea versus South Korea on it. This is from the South Africa World Cup qualifiers, and this is a little piece of inter-Korean history because it was a competitive match between South and North Korea. Obviously, both teams were vying to be in the 2010 World Cup. It was a very strong North Korea team, and I think everyone will know the story of the North Korean team at that World Cup as well. It ended 1-0 to South Korea. It wasn't a particularly exciting match. There was a huge block of cheering fans for North Korea, however, who I believe may have been an example of these civic groups that we've talked about. So I'd expect to see a lot of choreography in support of the North Korean team as well. This seems to be about supporting inter-Korean relations. Is that a political message in itself? Well, that's obviously a topic beyond just a basic football podcast, of course. But it'd be very interesting to see a formal North Korean side, this side, or below the 38th, as it were, again.
Yes, well done. I like that. Let's just look down at the camera there. Cool. So that's, what's the name of the segment again?
Or this particular segment. Well, I have a magic box. So obviously on the K2 preview, we like to take something from inside the box. So.
So it's good because you said before we came on air as well that you have a lot of Ansan Greener stuff. It's nice to have something that's just different. And you had a Songnam versus Jeonnam Dragons, wasn't it? Program before. So just having something a little bit different is obviously going to help. Can't wait for that. Anyway, we will hopefully chat more about that next week on Monday. And then also perhaps an emergency podcast from Castle Park next Wednesday of next week, between Suwon FC Women and Naegohyang FC from North Korea. I'm Andrew. This is Mike. Thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you next week. Goodbye.
Take care.